Who's not coming down the track? Who's not coming down the track? It's a mean machine in red and white. Mean machine in red and white. Ain't nothing finer in the red. Ain't nothing finer in the red. Little brother marching straight to bed. Little brother marching straight to bed. Let 'em up. Let 'em up.
What's up, y'all? This is John, and I am joined by Sarthak Sharma to talk about the Mississippi State Bulldogs ahead of that game this weekend for this episode of the Nothing Finer podcast. Mike was supposed to be on tonight. One of his kids broke his router this afternoon, so he's not with us. But, Sarthak, how have you been?
I've been well, just working. Got a 1-year-old now. He's up to all kinds of shenanigans, just taking care of him. So I've had my hands full. Just been busy.
And so this is the third year in a row that we have talked about these two teams in this game. Next year will be the first year since we have started the podcast that Georgia's not playing Mississippi State. It's wild. It's wild.
It is. It is. I feel like there was a really long streak where there were no games between the two teams, and then there was a renaissance where we had to go through this. Honestly, been much better to have to face Georgia than Alabama year in and year out. So it's the result has been the same, but at least the journey has been a little less bumpy.
Yeah, it was from what 2011 or 12 until
I was at
2017.
the I 2010, I remember, was the game that Aaron Murray played, I think as a freshman at Mississippi State. I was a student there, and that was the first time I'd ever actually seen Georgia play in person, and Mississippi State won. I was like, "Oh, this is supposed to be a blue blood, not that great." And then I ended up going to law school at UGA later under the Mark Richt, kind of the last Mark Richt years. And saw a little bit better Georgia team, and then finally under Kirby, kind of actual blue blood status, I think, in the modern era.
So I'm trying to get the Winsipedia pulled up here, which is just the best website for any sort of trying to figure this stuff out. So
I can't imagine that Mississippi State has a advantage in many ways over Georgia on any kind of win-loss ratio, almost in any sport, maybe except for baseball.
so they played 2010 in Starkville, 2011 in Athens,
Yep.
and then 17, 20, 22, and 24. So it's gonna be
I
weird.
don't think they won after 10, right? I think after 10 they were all losses for
That
Mississippi
is
State.
correct. I was not gonna bring that part up.
That's okay. That's okay. We're
So
used to that.
getting into this year's team, got their first SEC win over the past two seasons this weekend. And after being so close so many times, just this season alone, what are your thoughts? What were your thoughts when they went into the fourth quarter with the deficit?
I think the collective thought of the entire fan base was very much here we go again. It was a scenario where Mississippi State tries to keep it close and then just cannot finish a game. In that case, we didn't even have the lead. We weren't even tied. We were actually losing by two touchdowns. And at that point, it felt like there's no way that this team is going to be able to come back down two touchdowns to win this game. So it was a real shocker that they were able to do it.
So, ironically, when we previewed this game last week, I said for Mississippi State, if you want to win, you have to be up by at least three touchdowns going into the fourth quarter because your defense just leaves. They don't show up. I don't know what it is. And then the exact opposite thing happened this week. So I was happy because I called Mississippi State to win that game. But it's just, it's pretty wild what they've been able to do this season. And so this offseason, a lot of people were really low on Mississippi State, forgetting that when Blake Shapen was healthy at the beginning of the 2024 season, they were good. and they took Arizona State down to the wire in Tempe, and it was a significantly different team with Blake Shapen over Van Buren. Um, so what are your thoughts on Blake Shapen's play this season?
So Shapen's play has been really inconsistent, right? There have been times. So if you think about the Arizona State game, right, that first half, I mean, they're just going right through Arizona State in the first few drives, right? He's hitting guys right there on target, and then all of a sudden the offense just kind of grinds to a halt. And he is missing guys. He's taking sacks. He's just holding on the ball too long. He's not escaping the pocket. And you see that happen in game after game where he's had drives where he just looks like a Heisman quality quarterback. And then you have drives where you just feel like he's completely lost out there. And unfortunately, he's had a few too many of those drives, and it's kind of left the fan base really divided on their feelings about him as the starting quarterback.
So what do you expect from him this weekend?
It's tough, right? So last year, by the time the Georgia game came around, Shapen had been hurt, and so Van Buren had stepped in and actually played his best game of his freshman year against Georgia. So we haven't really seen what Shapen looks like against UGA. The expectation, one, is that he plays a little bit more consistent because he has the win, the SEC win kind of under his belt, right? The hope is that he's kind of pulled it together. He's gotten past that kind of bugaboo of like, oh, he's not going to be able to win the big game, can't win an SEC game. So that's the hope. What we're going to see, we have no idea. And this is all kind of in the shadow of what we dealt with when we saw Kamario Taylor come in, right? And so the fan base also wants Kamario Taylor in the game for multiple drives as well. So we're going to have to see if the fan base's want of Taylor in the game kind of overshadows or even creates any kind of pressure on Shapen to try to overperform, where he tries to make throws that maybe he doesn't have, right? Because if you see this year, the biggest issue for Shapen has been overthrowing receivers. He's had potentially the fastest guy, not just in the SEC, but in the country on the team on offense in Brennan Thompson, and he's still overthrowing him. He's wide open. Mississippi State is most likely a playoff team if Shapen just completes those deep throws, but he hasn't been able to. So if he can do that, I think you've got a good chance of at least keeping this close.
So going into his protection, the offensive line has been a weak point so far this season. 15th in the SEC in sacks allowed, thanks to Auburn for still being last in the country there, and 15th in the SEC in tackles for loss. And that one, South Carolina is 16th. But Georgia hasn't been good at getting to the quarterback this season. So what are you expecting from the line this weekend?
So there's really a few different reasons for the bad statistics here, right? So one, you have players on the offensive line that just have not gotten to the level that people thought they were going to get to by now. So folks like Jimothy Lewis have just not matured as offensive linemen to what we thought they would going to be this year. That's one. Two, there've been a lot of injuries, right? So right now, Albert Reese is questionable, I believe. He, wasn't able to play last week. So there's been, because of the injuries, there's been a lot of inconsistency. So left tackles have moved to right tackle, guards have moved around to tackle, and vice versa. So when you don't have that, you don't have a lot of meshing that happens game to game. So that's caused issues. And then finally, you just have the Blake Shapen problem of holding the ball too long, not escaping out of the pocket. And so we've seen multiple coverage sacks that have also happened by Shapen just holding the ball too long, where you just can't really blame the offensive line. But the statistics still shows that the line kind of crumbled there. So it's been a multitude of issues that have plagued the line.
So the running back group. A few years ago, we asked if there were running backs on the team when Leach was the coach, but now I think they've got some really good guys, averaging 20 yards more per game than in 2024. But even with the improvement, there have been some ups and downs this season. What is the key to them having a good game on Saturday?
Definitely obviously going to be offensive line play, right? But part of it's also going to be that deep passing game that I mentioned, right? You've got to get the linebackers and corners and safeties to start respecting the passing game a bit more, because what's been happening is you have two of arguably the best backs in the league, and the stats kind of bear that out, especially with Fluff Bothwell, who's been back from injury looking pretty good. You can't have Georgia's defense stacking the box because you're not going to be able to run, right? So you have to have Shapen be able to get a consistent pass game going to open up some of those holes. And we got to see some. You got to see some open lanes there as well. So that's going to be on the offensive line to start creating some open lanes and potentially some more interesting plays than what you have seen. You've seen a lot of draws right up the middle. We haven't seen a lot of plays like out to off the off tackle. We're gonna see if Jeff Lebby's got something else in the tank in terms of creative play calling.
The wide receivers have just been absolutely elite, having two guys in the top 42 nationally in receiving yards. How thankful are Mississippi State fans that Georgia never found a spot in the offense for Anthony Evans?
Very thankful, right? I mean, there is an argument that over the last couple of years, Mississippi State has become just for the last couple of years, wide receiver U, right? When you think about what the folks like Mario Craver, who is just absolutely lighting it up, right, at Texas A&M. You think Kevin Coleman, who's lighting it up at Mizzou, right? And now you have the emergence of Brennan Thompson, who wasn't able to accomplish near what he has accomplished either at Texas or Oklahoma. And then same with Anthony Evans, who wasn't able to do what he's doing here, right? Mississippi State is putting out some really good wide receiver talent, or at least developing it. And so we're going to see if, against kind of those higher upper 4-star, 5-star corners, if that trend continues. And this is all still under the guise of Shapen's inconsistency. If Blake Shapen can put 4 good quarters together, you could see 2 wide receivers that are both averaging over 100, or getting over 100 yards a game.
So moving over to the defensive side of the ball, the front has struggled to stop the run at times, allowing 162 yards per game, but they are 38th nationally when stopping the run against ranked teams. What is it about that group that performs well against better teams?
So there's a couple things here. One, so last year's defense was abysmal, arguably the worst defense in the entire FBS. So the expectation this year was if you're just bad, like not just good, but if you're just bad, Mississippi State will win more games, right? Because you're expecting the offense to be better. This defense has legitimately been good, but I would love to see the statistic of this defense for the first 3 quarters, because the fourth quarter is really where the defense has just become worn out. And a lot of that has to do with the inconsistency of the offense, where you have multiple 3 and outs. That's just getting the defense right back on the field after essentially 5 minutes, right? And they're getting gassed. That happened versus A&M, right? The Texas A&M scores very close through halftime into the third quarter, and then A&M just gets the lead, right? Texas, they're beating down on Texas. Arch Manning cannot do anything for essentially 3.5 or so quarters, and then it just breaks open because the offense just goes and stagnates. The defense has been incredibly good, but unfortunately, just given where the Mississippi State team is right now under Lebby, there's just not depth on the team. So because of the lack of depth, the defense can't put 4 full quarters together of elite play. So you need the offense to come through and get enough of a lead to be able to let the defense kind of just endure till the end of the game.
So the secondary started the season playing at an absolutely elite level. I think by week 4 they were top 15 in passing yards allowed. But since have come down to earth a little bit. They're still top half of the country, allowing 206.8 yards per game. Now, what does that group need to do to take advantage of a Georgia passing game that goes into lulls at times?
Sure. So first, Kelly Jones is likely a future first round draft pick, right? 6'4" corner, has been elite, is ranked, I think, in the top 2 or 3 corners from every stat currently out there, is essentially an island unto himself. Right? The other corners, not as great, but have been able to kind of hold their own. Isaac Smith has been fantastic, at safety. He was great last year. He's been very good this year. The problem has just been there are not a lot of guys behind them to kind of keep that going, right? And so what you really need is forcing a few turnovers to try to get Gunnar Stockton kind of out of his rhythm, to try to disrupt the receivers' routes, to try to get them out of sync early so that you don't have that scenario again where the defense just gets tired and then the offense for Georgia gets going, right? You want to create not just lulls, but actual like long-term dips. If you can do that, then I think the offense will be able to get enough points for Mississippi State where Georgia hopefully cannot come back. It's not as prolific of an offense, as maybe some of these other teams have been. Even though we have seen Georgia be able to put up points against teams like Tennessee.
So, what are you most concerned about going into this game?
It's going to be two things. On the offense, it's going to be Shapen going back into his lull and creating quarterback controversy with Kamario Taylor. That's on offense. On defense, it's absolutely the concerns with depth. Georgia has a ton more depth on both sides of the ball and special teams, and Mississippi State is just not going to be able to keep up with that. So State needs some breaks early. They need to get Georgia out of rhythm, out of what they're used to, because really one of the big things with UGA is not only are they may be a slow starting team, but coming out of a halftime, almost every game they get it turned around. Right, Georgia's a very resilient program under Kirby, and so they know how to stay in games, how to get rhythm back on their side. And that is the exact opposite for Mississippi State. State has scored, I think, almost every single time on their first drive this year, maybe save for one game. So State's a great first half team and then really dies out in the second half. So, it's kind of a tale of two very different teams in terms of the way they start and end games.
And what are you most confident in going into this game?
So for State, I'm most confident, I think, in the cornerback play. I think Mississippi State has the cornerback talent to keep Georgia from scoring a ton of points, right? Like in my view, I think the first team probably clipping 30 points is going to be the winner of this game. I think the cornerback talent, I don't like Georgia's got some good receivers, but I don't believe that they have the elite receivers that teams like Texas A&M have shown to have, where they actually did create a lot of separation between corners and receivers.
All right, so we have a couple of games that we're going to ask you to pick. We're going to give the spread and the over/under. We're just asking for the straight up pick, and then there's two that I've forgotten to put in the document here, so I'm gonna read those off. But Texas A&M going to Columbia, going to play Missouri. A&M 7.5 point road favorite, over under 47.5.
Oh, I'm taking A&M to win this with the points here. This is a lock. Mizzou is down to their third string quarterback. I mean, this is going to be Missouri just struggling to survive. I think the defense probably tries to keep it close early, but I think A&M just takes it and goes. This to me is going to be a scenario where Mizzou struggles to get to even 20 points.
Yeah, Ahmad Hardy was one of those guys that up until Mizzou got down to their third quarterback, you were thinking he's obviously going to be he's going to have the most yards of any running back in the SEC. And then he became their only option.
Yeah, I mean A&M. I think the strategy is going to be 8 in the box and make them throw. I just don't think that Mizzou is going to be able to do that.
Right. LSU at Alabama. Alabama 10.5 point home favorite, over under 48.5.
I think Bama's also going to have a beatdown opportunity on LSU. I mean, LSU, where not only are we, we got interim AD, we got interim coach, got a lot of questions swirling about the offense, which has already struggled all throughout the year. Nussmeier has just been a huge disappointment. They haven't had the running backs that they have, historically had. The defense is still good, but you're playing at Alabama. I mean, that is a tough, Bryant-Denny is a very difficult place to play. The crowd knows, I mean, they smell blood in the water, and getting an opportunity to beat down on LSU, I think Alabama is going to take every opportunity. I mean, in my opinion, Bama is probably right now the most complete team in the SEC.
And then we got a Big 12 game, and it's a top 10 matchup. BYU going to Lubbock, playing Texas Tech. Texas Tech 10.5 point home favorite, over under 52.5.
I would not touch this game with a 10-foot pole in terms of betting it. I would not. One, I never bet against the Mormons. These BYU guys, I don't know how they do it, but they win games. Just I don't understand how they gather the talent that they do. That they're really well coached. Texas Tech has paid for a ton of talent. I think they've got one loss, but they're still trending to be a really good team this year. BYU, I really don't like. I would not bet against BYU, but Texas Tech has a ton of talent on their team, so this to me is a complete toss up.
Yeah, I also would not touch this with a 10-foot pole. BYU's quarterback wears 47, and I can't condone those actions.
That is really absurd as a number for a quarterback.
All right, and then obviously the last game we're talking about the one between the Bulldogs. Georgia going to Starkville playing Mississippi State Georgia 7.5 point favorite over under 57.5.
I am probably going to regret this, but I am going to call for the upset here. I think Mississippi, because it's at home more than anything else, right? I think that Mississippi State has been so close. I mean, Mississippi State they were close to being basically a 3-5 team more so than anything else, but they were also really close to essentially being a playoff level team, right? They had Tennessee on the ropes, right? They had Texas, I mean, dead to rights. You win those games, you are a playoff caliber team. And to that point, they just didn't know how to win. Feels like they got over that hump here. And I think there's going to be a huge crowd. SEC Nation is there. The Barstool guys are there. It's going to be, I think, in a really electric atmosphere. I'm calling for the Bulldogs of Mississippi State to come out ahead. Just eke out a victory.
All right, we appreciate you coming on and talking to us. I got to get out of here and edit some things, but always a pleasure having you on. And it's going to be really weird to not have the same conversation next year.
Same here, man. But we can just talk offline next year
Oh, for sure.
about other games. All right.
Absolutely. Thanks. Have a good one.
Yep.